The Texas Water Safari is an amazing adventure, and most people do the race the first time in an aluminum canoe, like the one here going over Martindale Dam. Aluminum canoes are great. You can beat the heck out of them, and they're very durable, although they're kind of slow. After doing it in a canoe like that, one might want to upgrade into something faster. This is a carbon fiber racing canoe designed and built by Crozier, maybe 20 or 18 years ago. This boat has seen a lot of time on the water, and it's been through many adventures. When I first got the boat, I noticed that there's some cracks on the bottom with some water leaking out from previous trips. If you push on some of these cracks, the honeycomb on the inside felt pretty soft, like there was some damage to it beneath. When I first looked at it, it was in the shade, it was cool, and then I set the boat out in the sun, thinking if there was water inside it could dry out. And this is the video I got. You can actually see the water being forced out from evaporation from inside. The reason trapped water underneath the hole like this, in between the hole and the honeycomb, is a problem is because inherently the boat's going to exist in a place that gets hot and cold, hot and cold. And as it gets cold, that liquid condenses into liquid form, and then when it gets hot, some of it evaporates, and that involves a lot of changing in pressure. And so you have this fluid inside undergoing thermal cycling, hot and cold cycles, that leads to contraction and expansion forever, non-stop, until it finds its way out. So let's make a plan to fix this thing. Go through step by step how I repaired the canoe, and a lot of this is based off of secondhand knowledge, watching other YouTube videos. The first step is to make a plan. As you can see here, I've circled on the canoe with a Sharpie the areas where the cracks are and where I'm going to sand it down, and if it's deep enough, remove any of the damaged carbon fiber to get a look at the honeycomb on the inside and assess the damage there. Now, this is where things can get controversial. In my opinion, it's best to be aggressive in the situation. My background as a surgeon in dealing with things like abscess, deep space infection, often requires large incisions and exposing the problem to root out the evil. You'll see in the rest of the video how aggressive I am. The reason for this is any water left trapped inside, or any route for water to get in, is going to be a major problem. If you leave it under your repair, it's going to have thermal cycling like we discussed before, and whatever you do is just going to expand, open up, and be a continued problem if you don't go deep enough and solve the problem to start with. If canoe surgery makes you nauseous or sick, please look away now. You're about to get wild and start cutting. I used an oscillating saw with a 1-inch blade to cut through the carbon. What surprised me was how thin the carbon was, and you really need to be careful to not go too deep and cut through the honeycomb, and maybe even cut through the inner layer of carbon, which we'll see later. That's what I did at first. Oops. You live and learn. Anyways, once I get the cut started, and in a whips fashion, I use a knife to cut the damaged carbon off of the honeycomb and slowly peel it back. I extend the cut all the way along the soft edge of the carbon and all the way along the crack, ultimately peeling it off and taking off a strip of carbon to where we could get hard edges to work with. Now the inner support structure is exposed. This is the honeycomb that's on the bottom of the boat between the two layers of carbon. Some of it was damaged, and I removed it with rough sandpaper or a pair of needle nose pliers. After the damaged areas are removed, it's time for step 2, which is getting it all ready for the repair. Your goal with the prep is to sand down the edges around your damaged area to the original carbon fiber so that you have a good surface to adhere to in the later stages. You want to sand enough, but not too much. I did this with the oscillating saw with increasing levels of grit, starting at 60, going to 120, then 200, then 400. We're ready to start repairing now.
In our case here, we have somewhat of a defect after removing the damaged carbon fiber and the damaged honeycomb beneath. In these cases, from what I've read, it's best to mix some epoxy with these glass borosilicate balls, or they're just called glass microspheres. This allows the material to be easily sanded, and it's pretty light compared to just resin. Once you work it into the defect, you can put a glass or a piece of peel ply over it that really allows you to work out any air and get it nice and smooth. You see me smoothing this down with a paper towel. I wouldn't recommend that actually. After doing it, I would recommend using something like a credit card or something with a sharp edge to really work it down and get a flat surface. Once you have all the air squeezed out and it's nice and flat, you can use some duct tape and tape it down and really get some compression on it. Now, I don't think that part's actually necessary. You can just leave it without the tape, but I went ahead and did that to try to get it really tight. Let it dry for at least 8 or 12 hours overnight ideally, and then you can pull the peel ply off and see what you got. The next thing you're going to do to this is get your sander and sand down any rough edges. And as you can see, there was actually a depression in the middle. So I went ahead and put a little bit more glass microspheres there, let it dry, and sanded it down until it was smooth and ready for carbon fiber and more epoxy. Finally, we're getting close to laying down the new carbon fiber. It's important to make sure it's very clean. The way I did that was with some isopropyl alcohol and just wiping it down with a paper towel. This gets all of the residue, any grit off. It's really going to clean the pores out and let your epoxy seal in there. I also surrounded the area with some duct tape. There are other smaller defects that I was fixing as well at the same time, but for the purposes of this video, we're just going to focus on the larger one with the glass microspheres and the big repair. Surrounding the area like this with duct tape helps to prevent any spread of epoxy and limit what you're doing to one small area and not get the whole boat dirty. We've now moved into the garage where it's a little bit more controlled. First lay down a layer of epoxy on the glass microspheres, and then a piece of carbon fiber that's 1-to-1 and fits right into that space. Another layer of epoxy, and then we put a bigger piece of carbon fiber to totally cover up the first one and extend out to about 2 centimeters on all the edges. More epoxy on top of that, and then a big piece of peel ply that lets you squeeze all of the air out and get it really seamless and tacked down.
I speak ain't easy to walk, but you've been pushing hard enough, steady as a hawk, and you don't have to listen when they say stop. They say that everything is done, but I've never been